Recently, I've been getting into a bit of mountain biking. Coming from a road and cyclocross background, I've tended to gravitate naturally towards XC. So I bought my own XC bike, this Grand Canyon 29er, and I tend to crash a lot. And because I crash a lot, I tend to have the fear when things get a bit gnarly. So I went to Jon Woodhouse, who's done a lot of mountain biking, knows his stuff, just to ask him, are there any ways that I can get my confidence up when mountain biking? So John, looking at me now, looking at my bike, where can I improve to gain my confidence?
So I think the first thing, obviously you've gone for a cross-country bike, which if you're going to start racing is obviously a good choice. But the thing about cross-country bikes is they tend to have low-profile tyres that roll very fast, but maybe don't have the most grip. They tend to have steeper geometry, it means a bit twitchy, and obviously the one you've got is a hardtail. So that's why I brought along this Focus Vice. The main thing about this is that it's a full suspension bike. So we've got 130mm of travel at the front, 120 out back, and it's actually got quite relaxed trail geometry. I've also brought along, despite you being the same size as me, a large frame. The reason for that is that I think that a bike with a longer wheelbase is much more stable. That's going to give you the confidence when things get rougher.
So aside from adding a rear suspension and a bigger, longer bike, what else are we looking at?
Another thing that's really important is your contact points, and the most important one being your tyres. So this bike comes with this set of chunky Continental tyres. However, because this bike's built to a bit of a budget, these are slightly hard compound ones. So I've also brought along some nice and sticky, sort of grippy rubber to replace them with, and we'll see if that makes a bit of a difference.
Obviously, it's got a dropper seat post. I've never actually ridden one, so how's that going to help?
Well, I think the dropper seat post is one of the most important upgrades that a rider of any level can make. Unless you're about all-out lightweight, you should really get one of these. Being able to move around on the bike and sort of change your position, if you've got that much more freedom, you're going to feel that much better. I can't help noticing what you're wearing. I mean, that's perfect for going racing, but out on the trail, you're probably going to want a bit of protection, as you've already found out.
As you can see, I have now been radicalised.
I mean, it might sound a bit silly, but knee pads, they just add a little bit of confidence, so you don't need to worry about bashing your knees. Loose-fitting baggy clothing, that offers a bit more protection in a crash, so you can rub and move about. But it's not all about the kit. There are some other little setup tips and tricks I'm going to try and use to kind of get you feeling more comfortable, put you in a better shape on the bike.
We've had a bit of a fettle during that montage, so John, could you just talk through about what you've actually done to the bike?
Okay, so we've changed the tyres. Both of these tyres are now tubeless ready, so it means at a later date, if you want to bung in some tubeless valves and gunk, then you can go that, more punch resistance, less weight. The rear one is actually a dual compound tyre, which means that on the edges it's got slightly stickier rubber for cornering grip, but in the middle it still uses a fairly solid rubber, so it won't be too draggy, it's not going to kill you going up hills. Up at the front, it's a similar story, but this actually uses an even softer compound. So the edges of that will give plenty of sort of bite into the ground, loads of grip, and hopefully give you loads of confidence.
So I saw you messing around with the levers up the front. What have you done there?
Basically what I've done is I've raised the levers. By cranking those levers up, what happens is that your heel of your palm actually sits below the angle of the bar, which means when you get pushed forwards, your hand is more likely to push into the bar and get better grip rather than being pushed over the top. Another thing that I've done is I've altered the bite point of the levers and I've set them a lot closer. Obviously it'll feel like you've got no brakes at all until they bite. Having those levers much closer in means you can make a more effective fist like that. And it's much more effective to hold on to something like that than it is something like that. That's going to mean much less arm strain.
The other setup you did that isn't immediately obvious is actually my cleats.
What I've done is that I've moved the cleat almost as far back as it goes into the shoe. It means that your foot is going to sit more middling there, which means that you're not going to be on your tippy toes. You're fit enough from riding loads of road and cross that you can probably suffer losing a bit of efficiency for a bit more downhill confidence.
As I said earlier, the whole point of this is to help me with my confidence when mountain biking, especially on those descents. So I'm going to take the bike away for a few weeks, ride it and see how we got on.
So, Reuben's had quite a bit more time with the bike. You've ridden it all over the place. Yep. So what did you make of it?
Well, first of all, I had a wicked time. It's a very fun bike. I've ridden it at Bike Park Wales, Forest of Dean and Avon and a few local trail centres. And yeah, just an absolute blast.
Compared to your kind of racy hardtail, which element of the trail bike do you think was the biggest difference for you?
Well, I think the number one in terms of feel is just the fact that it's got a rear suspension. It allows me just to hit some of the rougher stuff, which I think on the hardtail I probably would have bulked at a bit and maybe even walked down some bits. The focus, it's very sort of planted. Since I've actually started riding, I don't think I ever felt actually out of control, but I very much did on the Canyon hardtail.
Do you think that helps you with riding things you might not have ridden before in terms of the confidence that it gave you, that you're not thinking about falling off?
Yeah, so for example at Bike Park Wales and Avon, it's terrain that was probably on the gnarlier end of the scale that I've actually ridden.
Do you say that it's kind of pushed your riding or your skill on as well as your confidence?
I mean, I'd hope so. I could only tell until I take the hardtail to somewhere a bit more gnarlier, but I feel like there are certain upgrades or certain changes to that Canyon that I feel like I'd have to make now that I've ridden the trail bike.
We also did some setup changes. Out of those, which of them did you feel made the biggest difference? And is it stuff that you'd actually go back and apply to your own bike?
One of the main ones is having a slightly more aggressive front tyre. I really did notice a difference just having that extra front grip, and the confidence that you can gain from that for me was huge. In terms of like cleat position, your position was a bit extreme for me, and you mentioned that pedalling would feel a bit weird, and it definitely felt a bit too weird for me. So I moved the cleat position a bit forward. I could see the benefit of it if you're going downhill all day, but because I like to pedal a bit, I just wanted to have that balance.
Yeah, I guess that's like a good thing about going to an extreme, is you can always step back from it a bit.
John did actually give me some wider bars, I think about 780mm, which is a huge step up for me. I didn't install those because I found that the spec bars, while giving me confidence, I was actually punching trees when the trail got a bit narrow. Until I think I can maybe throw the bike around a bit more. As a beginner, I just don't want too wider bars, so then I'm punching every tree as I go past it.
Yeah, I think I've been a bit naughty because I had put into quite an extreme setup that I'm pretty sure you wouldn't actually love straight off. Starting off with quite an extreme position is a good thing, because then you can actually know what difference that makes, and then you can like back it down up until you're very happy with it.
There's one addition to the trail bike that I'd never ridden before, and that's a dropper post. Now, having ridden one, I can't really see myself not riding with one, even on the hardtail. And it's just the fact that it gets the saddle completely out of the way and you just have so much more room to move.
A lot of people that haven't tried them still think that dropper posts are hype and it's sort of really unnecessary. But there are very, very few people that have ridden with one that will then come back and go, actually no, I'm not interested in that.
I'm never going to be at the front end of an XC race, so I might as well take the hit on the weight penalty and have that huge confidence boost.
It seems like you're really positive about this trail bike. Does that mean that the Canyon's no longer going to have a place in your shed?
For me and the riding that I like to do, I think I'd have to err back towards the Canyon race bike, but with the spec changes that you've showed me, I think there's definitely ways to make that bike more confidence inspiring, less twitchy, and basically the right bike for me.
Well, this didn't go exactly as I'd hoped. I was expecting Reuben to be singing the praises of trail bikes and throwing his weird racy bike just probably off a cliff somewhere in a symbolic act. But it's interesting to know that even if your riding does err towards the more racy side, there's still lots of things you can learn from sort of like a bit of a gnarlier bike, and that you've applied that there. I think that's really interesting. And the big takeaway, everyone should get a dropper post.
Yes.
Amazing.